Shalom, shalom. Hope y'all having a fantastic day. This is Evan Israel from RPK, Resurrection, Prophecy, and Kingdom. As you can tell, I'm on my truck right now. So hopefully this still turns out perfect. I wasn't planning on doing this, but, I've been looking at people talk about the book of Revelation a lot lately, especially dealing with the presidency and all that stuff, the presidential election and etc. So what I plan on doing is just try to make the book of Revelation easy, so I can tag anyone. Let's see if it'll allow me to tag now. Let's see here. Yes, for some reason Facebook has stopped allowing me to tag people, but still, I don't need to tag anyone because I'm going to put this on my YouTube channel too, RPK, Resurrection, Prophecy, and Kingdom, as well as the Assembly of Sound Doctrine Chandler. So I'm going to try to make Revelation, the book of Revelation, I'm trying to make it easy for everyone because a lot of people have a lot of trouble with the imagery in it. So I'm just going to make it easy. And sorry, everybody, I only have my Revised Standard Bible today. As you can tell, wear and tear, because this is my truck Bible. So sorry about that. But I'm going to still try to make it work. So it might not read just like your Masoretic or Septuagint. Masoretic or New King James Version Bible. Shalom, Brother Andre. Shalom, shalom, shalom. I'm just trying to make the book of Revelation easy because a lot of people are struggling with it. Okay, first of all, dealing with the book of Revelation, you got to go back to the context. And I don't know if you can hear me. If you can hear me, do a like or something on it so I know that you can hear what I'm saying. Thumbs up or something, because I don't know how the signals is out here. But hopefully I'm not just talking to myself and y'all can't hear what I'm saying. But anyway, dealing with the background of the book of Revelation, right? You got to understand the background, the backstory is this is the first century. In the first century, the quote unquote assembly or the way, the sect, it's all being established. And what we deem the church, it's all being put together. And what's going on is they're pretty much walking away from being 100% Torah following into finding a way to worship the Father through this new means on which this guy called himself the Messiah, what he brought out and what his disciples came out with, which is a new means and method. They're saying that instead of concentrating on the physical temple, you have a more holy temple inside of you. So instead of doing all of the things that you were doing in order that you think that pleased the Father, that really never really pleased him, and the only way to please him is through the gospel, through the understanding of love, and instead of all of the judgment that you guys are bringing on through the law of Moses, we're going to turn that into love, and we're going to help each other out, and we're going to do all of that stuff, which was pretty much contrary to what the Pharisees was wanting to do, because they was stuck in a position of power, right? And they wanted to, shalom, my brother, shalom, shalom, love you, brother Jonah. And they wanted to keep that power that they had. They had they was already prideful being the children of God, right? They didn't really want to share that what's the word I'm looking for? Their royalty with other people. And if you go into the history, you see that if anyone outside of the nation of Israel wanted to worship Israel's God to the degree that the Israelites were doing, they had to get up under the banner of Israel. They had to become circumcised. They had to find out the Torah for themselves. They had to get up under the teachings. They had to submit to the Levites and into those of the Pharisaical nature. Are those priests, etc. So they had to pretty much put themselves in subjection to another man instead of the Most High, if they even wanted to worship the Most High. Well, when you have Christ coming around, Christ said, no, I want you to follow what I'm saying now. Don't worry about what the Levites are saying per se. They're saying some good things, but their works are not what their actions are saying. They're teaching you the correct characteristics of the Father, but their actions is not displaying it. So we're just going to do it the correct way. We're going to teach it the way that it's supposed to be taught, and we're going to display it. So the Pharisees really wasn't feeling that, because Christ was telling them, he was the he was the way, not through Rome, not through the Levitical priesthood, but through his words. The words that he was bringing was the way. So that would take a lot of if you know Rome really didn't like anyone not being an authoritative, or they didn't like anyone going against the community that they set up. You know, they didn't like anyone challenging their their power, or the way that they had the systems set up. So Christ would have doing that whole give to Caesar's what is Caesar's, but give to the Father which is the Father. And in Rome demanded you to worship the king or the emperor like he was the father. So eventually that was going to become a conflict. And the Levites found a way to actually counter exist, if I can say, with Rome, if that's the correct word. But so right now you had pretty much this new movement saying that we're going to concentrate more on the Father. You know, we're not really worried about the political aspect of it. We're not worried about this power. We're just worried about the Father. So you have a persecution of the church, right? You got a persecution of the Jews by the Jews, and then you have a persecution of the Jews by the Romans also. So you got the church being persecuted mainly because of their beliefs. The belief that you don't have to have power, or you don't have to hurt someone in order to display that the Most High is your king, or the Most High is your father. You don't have, in order to get this type of blessing, in order to have this type of authority, in order to be this type of king, you don't have to go out. You don't have to hurt no one. You can do it a peaceful way, which is pretty much not what Rome was doing at all. Neither was the Jews doing it at all. They was all about judgment. They was all about war. They was all about fighting, and etc. So you got this new sect going around that's telling them to do something opposite. And like everything, even today, people don't like change. So you have a lot of persecution going on within the first century. So that's the backstory. Shalom, shalom. Sorry about that. I didn't see you, brother Tony. But that's the backstory of the book of Revelation. So now, let's get into what's going on in the book of Revelation. Revelation 1, and this is just giving you the backstory. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants. So, this is the unveiling, right? This is the unveiling of Christ. And this unveiling was given by the Father. Because remember, no man knows the day or the hour, no man except the Father. So now, the Father is revealing this day and hour to Christ. And Christ is to show his servants the things that was leading up to this day and hour. So that's what he was doing. But look what he says. What must soon take place. He made it known by sending his angel to his servant John, who testified to the word of God and to the testimony of Jesus Christ, even to all that he saw. So now, all of the things that the Father told the Son was to relay that same message into John. But he gave it to John in visions, and John explained it in apocalyptic literature. So if you don't know what apocalyptic literature is, it's pretty much what we would call today the Sci-Fi Channel. It's what we would call today science fiction, which meant that it's an underlying truth behind it, but it's wrapped in so much bizarre things that it's sometimes, if you're not concentrating on the message, or if you don't have a background understanding on what that episode is about, or how the whole show started in the beginning, if you don't have that background episode, you could get lost in all of the theatrics and the bizarreness of the science fiction that's going on, if that makes sense. So he used apocalyptic literature, which is an over expounding of things. It's like an over exaggeration. It's like he's using imagery to explain physical things. And we have more apocalyptic literature inside of the Bible, like in the book of Daniel, when Daniel had those 4 beasts. But then you find out that those 4 beasts actually represented people. They was actually empires. So now you have 4 beasts that comes out looking like bears, and etc. But these beasts actually represented empires. So the book of Revelation is the same thing. It used a lot of imagery that's like animal instincts, because it's the nature of the animal that he was getting to. So they use the animals to represent the characteristics of certain individuals. So you have the dragon, which represented an individual. You have the beast coming out of the land and of the sea, which represented empires and emperors and high priests and all of this other stuff. So you got a lot of this imagery, but if you don't know the background or what they're pulling from, you're going to get lost in it, and you're going to somehow make it be about the United States of America. And that's the problem that we have. So let's start off where it actually started. So this is the unveiling of Jesus Christ, right? And he was giving it to John, and John was telling the 7 assemblies about things that was going to come to pass that they was going to see. Not what we're going to see thousands of years later, but what they was going to see. But what people don't understand is Christ had already given a prophecy, right? In Matthew 24, Christ gave a prophecy about the destruction of Jerusalem. Now, I don't know why people want this to be about America or our future, but it's literally about the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple, which the Roman army did. So let me show you Matthew 24:1. And as Jesus came out of the temple and was going away, his disciples came to point out to him the buildings of the temple. So this is the temple that was around in first century, the one that Herod had them build. Then he asked, "You see all these, do you not? Truly I tell you, not one stone will be left upon here upon another. All will be thrown down." And when he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" So Christ just told them that Jerusalem, the temple that everybody used in order to know the Most High, the main way to know the Most High was through the temple. So he just dropped a big bombshell on them. See, this only happened like one major time before, was when King Nebuchadnezzar came in and destroyed the temple the first time, and they built it. So now he's dropping a bomb on them in the first century, that the temple is going to be destroyed again. So they're asking him, what was going to be the signs? Because if you read in scriptures, the Jews always seek for a sign. Not bad. Right there. The Jews always seek for a sign, and the Greeks always seek for wisdom. So them being Jews, they asked Christ what was going to be the sign of the destruction of the temple. So then he goes in the information, giving them signs of the destruction of the temple. He goes giving them the signs. So a lot of people want this to be the signs about the end of the world or something. No, they asked him about the signs that led to the destruction of the temple, and he was giving them signs. So this is what people mess up at. It's a prophecy about Jerusalem being destroyed, right? And Christ is giving this prophecy. And then Revelation is the unveiling of Jesus Christ. So, right. So now, how do you know a prophet is a prophet according to Torah? The things that he say must shortly come to pass. And if the things he say don't come to pass, do not fear him. He's a false prophet. So if Christ is the Messiah, right? He's standing on the grounds that he's the Messiah, right? He's the divine figure that they was waiting on. He's saying, I am the Messiah. I am the Son of Man. I am this and that. And I'm telling you something big. The temple is going to be destroyed. The only way to prove that he was that prophet, and if he was that prophet, that meant that he was that Messiah. He was the Son of Man. He was the divine figure. So everything that he said stood up on the grounds of this prophecy, because this prophecy was going to be the only way to prove that he was truly a prophet. He could be doing all of the healing and all of this stuff, but the prophets had to have a prophecy. So this was his prophecy. And the only way to unveil or reveal that he was whom he said he was, the prophecy had to be fulfilled. So even if the people still waiting on the prophecy of Revelation to be fulfilled today, you have no way of proving that Jesus that came in the first century was actually the Messiah, because according to Torah, the things he said must come to pass shortly. So if it have not came to pass, there's no evidence according to Torah to prove that he was a prophet. So you should not fear him, nor believe him, nor trust him, because his words was void. No matter how you looked at it, that's the truth. So now, let's look at what's going on here. And I'm just going to go back and forth to show you that the book of Revelation is actually the Olivet Discourse, or the prophecy that was given to the disciples about the destruction of the temple. I'm going to go back and forth just to show you a few things to show you that they're always about the same subject. So, let's see here. Matthew 24:4. Jesus answered, "Beware that no one leads you astray. For many will come in my name, saying, I am Messiah, and they will lead many astray. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you not be alarmed. For this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, kingdoms against kingdoms, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. And all of this is but the beginning of the birth pain." So now what do we have here? We have false Messiah. We have wars and rumors of wars. We got famines. We got earthquakes and everything, right? So once you go into the book of Revelation, Revelation 6, right? When he started opening up these seals, what happened when he opened up the seal? Revelation 6:1. I looked, and there was a white horse. Its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer. So you have a white horse in Revelation 6:1 that was conquering, right? And then in Revelation 19, what do we have here? Revelation 19:11. Then I saw heaven open, and there was a white horse, and its rider was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judged and made war. So we know in Revelation 19:11, the person riding that white horse was the Messiah. He was called Faithful and True. He was the Son of Man, the Word of God. That rider of that horse was the Messiah. So now, who is the rider of this horse coming in with all this chaos and stuff? Was it the Messiah? Did he have all that stuff coming on? No. He looked like the Messiah. He had the same Messiah attributes, but he did not have that name of the Messiah. He did not have that great army with him that the Messiah had, which meant that he was a messianic figure per se, but he wasn't the Messiah. So what did he tell them? For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Messiah, and will lead many astray, and you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. So what's going on here? This Messiah, this so-called Messiah is coming, and what do we have? He have a bow. And what is he doing? Conquering and conquering. So you have a Messiah coming, and wars is following this Messiah. Quote unquote, not the real Messiah, but the fake Messiah. So this is exactly what he said in Matthew 24, right? So then, what else is going to happen? Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in diverse places, right? So you go to Revelation 6 and 3. And I heard a second living creature saying, come out, and another horse came, bright red. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so that people would slaughter one another, and he was given a great sword. So now what happened? Peace is getting taken away from the earth. So what is this? You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. Nation rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Now you have peace being taken from the earth. Remember, these are the signs that led up to the destruction of Jerusalem, not the end of the world. So now what's next? Revelation 6 and 5. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the living creatures say, "Come and look." There was a black horse. Its rider had a pair of scales in his hand, and I heard what seemed to be a voice out of the midst of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a day's pay, and 3 quarts of barley for a day's pay. But do not damage the olive oil and the wine," which represents famine, right? They got famine now. Food is becoming short. So now the way that they're giving out the food, the barley, which is the greater food, the wheat, which is the greater food, and the barley, which is least of the greatest food, they're coming out at higher prices. So now, what's going on in Matthew 24? Matthew 24 and 7. Nation rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes, right? So now, look what else is said. Revelation 6 and 7. The fourth seal, "Come and look. And there was a pale green horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades followed him. And there was given authority over the fourth part of the earth to kill with a sword, famines, pestilences, and wild animals on the earth." So now you even have, once again, you got the famine introduced again. You got the pestilences, the diseases, and everything, and you got the killing of by the wild animals, which is all in the Song of Moses. So you got famines and earthquakes in various places, and if you look up the word earthquake right there, it actually represents things like storms. And sorry, y'all, it's getting kind of hot a little bit. See if I can open that up. But it represents storms, like gales in the wind. And we could go into the history of exactly what was going on in the first century, but not right now. "And they will hand you over to be tortured, and will you be put to death and hated of my name for all nations' sakes," and all that stuff. So then, what do we have here? "And when he opened the fifth, I saw the souls under the altar." And when he opened the fifth seal, this is Revelation 6 and 9. "When he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slaughtered for the word of God and for the testimony they have given." What's going to happen here in Matthew 24? Matthew 24 and 9. "For they will hand you over to be tortured and will put you to death, and you will be hated by my name, by all nations because of my name." So what's happening here in Revelation 6 now? The souls under the altar who have been slaughtered for the word of God and for the testimony that they had. You see, it's going in direct order, the exact order. And look, when he had opened the sixth seal, I looked, and there became a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth, full of moon. The stars fell from heaven, and the winter, as the fig drops its winter when shaken by a gale. So now you have what? A great earthquake. And in Matthew 24 and 3, what's going to happen? Famines, earthquakes, and in various places. So now, what else happened? It says, the sun became black as sackcloth. The full moon became like blood. The stars of the sky fell from to the earth as a fig tree drops its winter fruit when they're shaken by a gale. That is Matthew 24:29. Immediately at the suffering of those days, so this is after them being told to flee into the mountains. That's Matthew 24:15. When you see the desolating sacrilege standing in the holy place and spoken of by the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand, and let those which in Judea flee to the mountains. So you got to flee into the mountains. Now Revelation 24:29. Immediately after the suffering of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give off its lights, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven will be shaken. So what's happening here? Revelation 6:12, open the sixth seal. The sun became black as sackcloth, full moon became like blood, the stars fell from the heaven, etc. So now what happens after that in Matthew 24:30? Then the sign of the Son of Man would appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. What happens in Revelation 6:15? Then the kings of the earth, and magnates, and the generals, and the rich, and the powerful, and everyone, slave and free, hid in the caves and among the rocks, calling to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of the one seated on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand? So you have them hiding from the face of the one seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. So what do you have here in Matthew 24? After that, the Son of Man would appear in heaven. Then they would see the Son of Man coming on clouds with power and great glory. And then he would send out his angels with a loud sound of a trumpet, right? And what you have in Revelation 7, and after this, I saw the four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, holding back the wind, and etc. So now, this is all showing you that Revelation is actually Matthew 24 in parabolic. What's the words I'm looking for? It's parabolic, but also apocalyptic literature form. So now, let's say Matthew 24:15. So when you see the desolating sacrifice standing in the holy place, as was spoken of by Daniel the prophet, then let those in Judea flee to the mountain. Okay, so you have a flee into the mountain after they see the abomination of desolation, right? And woe and behold, you go to Revelation 12 and let's see here. 12 and 13. So when the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to the earth, he pursued the woman who has given birth to the male child. But the woman was given 2 wings of the great eagle, so that she could fly from the serpent into the wilderness to her place when she is nourished for a time, times and a half a time. So that's the fleeing into the mountains right there. Flying into the wilderness, fleeing into the mountains, because the mountains was in the wilderness. If you look at what's going on in Torah, they was in the wilderness when he went on top of the mountain and he got the old covenant. And if you guys don't understand what's going on here, this is a new Exodus happening. The book of Revelation is about the new Exodus, the spiritual Exodus happening for them to enter into the new covenant. Just like in the old Exodus, they entered into the old covenant. This new Exodus, they was entering into the new covenant through judgment. Remember, they got the old covenant occurred after they left Egypt being destroyed. The new covenant was going to occur after they left spiritual Egypt getting destroyed. And let me show you that Jerusalem was spiritual Egypt, right? You go to Revelation 11. Revelation 11, and let's see here if it says it. There. Revelation 11 and 7. When they have finished their testimony, the beast that comes up from the bottom of the pit will make war on them and conquer them and kill them. And their dead bodies will lie in the street of the great city that is prophetically called Sodom and Egypt, where also their Lord was crucified. Their Lord was crucified out in the outskirts of Jerusalem. So Egypt, spiritual Egypt, would be Jerusalem. So they're exiting from spiritual Egypt. They're doing the same thing that literally, remember when Egypt was destroyed by the judgments of God, right? They left Egypt, went into the wilderness, got the old covenant. Now they're leaving spiritual Egypt. Spiritual Egypt is being destroyed by the Roman army. Just like old Egypt was destroyed by the death angel. Now this death angel is coming under the guise of the Roman army, and he's destroying spiritual Egypt. And those that listen to Christ are considered the chosen ones. They go and make that spiritual exodus. So now, or they actually flee. That's the new exodus, and they get the new covenant. So now, let's keep going though. You got, let's see, we got the abomination, we got the fleeing right there. But let's go to the abomination of desolation, right? When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whosoever reader, let him understand. So now, where's the abomination of desolation in Revelation? You got Revelation, let me find it. Revelation 13 and Let's start at verse number... Let's start at verse number 9. Let anyone who have an ear listen. If you are being taken captive, into captivity you go. If you kill with the sword you must be killed. Here is a call for the endurance and faith of the saints. Then I saw another beast that rose out of the earth, and it had 2 horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. This is what we call the false Christ, right? The Antichrist, the anti-Messiah. He has 2 horns like a lamb. So he has the lamb characteristics, but he spoke like a dragon, which meant that he's a false Messiah. It exercises all the authority of the first beast, on its behalf, and it makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose mortal wounds had been healed. It performed great signs, even making fire come down from heaven to earth in the sight of all. So that's pretty much take you back to Elijah. It's doing something similar to what Elijah done, but this is a false Messiah, right? This is a false prophet, okay? So what else is going on? And by the signs that it allows to perform on behalf of the beast, it deceives the inhabitants of earth, telling them to make an image for the beast, that they have been wounded by the sword. They have been wounded by the sword. So now, what did Christ tell them? Matthew 24 and 5. For many will come in my name, saying, I am Messiah, and they will lead many astray. What else did he say? Matthew 24 and 23. And if anyone says to you, look, here is the Messiah, or there he is, do not believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and produce great signs and omens, and lead astray, if possible, even the elect. So what is this false Messiah doing? Performing great signs, making fire come down. Sorry, hold on. Okay, my brother. And I would say in Matthew 24:30, the clouds itself represents a means of judgment. I would say the clouds represents judgment, because if Yahweh was actually a deity known to ride on clouds when it came for judgment. And then you have Yahweh in the Bible riding on clouds again, coming for judgment. So I would say that meant that judgment was coming. Now, that's what I get from it, because in all of the cloud riding in the Bible is always dealing with judgment. But, we'll look into it and all that stuff later. But you see right here, Matthew 24, false messiahs, false prophets appearing, producing great signs and omens, leading people astray. So now what did you have here? Now remember, this was the signs for the destruction of the temple. So what do you have in Revelation 13? The same thing. It's performed great signs. Fire come down. It deceives the inhabitants of the earth, or the land, which was Judea, and it made an image of the beast, so that the image of the beast could speak and cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. So you have the abomination of desolation set up. But those who saw the abomination of desolation, they were supposed to flee into the mountains, right? So this is imagery of the abomination of desolation being set up by the false prophets, right? What else do we have here? What else did he have here? This generation will not pass away, which we know he said that he was coming quickly and everything else. You got the kingdom, and the good news of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the world as a testimony to all nations. Then the end will come. So you got the good news, which was the gospel being spread to all of the nations, right? So let's see if we can find that here. That is Revelation 14:6. Then I saw another angel flying in the mid-heaven with an eternal gospel to proclaim to those who live on the earth, to every nation and tribe and language and people. He said in a loud voice, "Fear God and give him glory, for the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made the heaven and earth, the sea and the springs of water." So now what happened? When the angel was flying, when the angel who had the eternal gospel was flying, and he was teaching everyone on the earth the eternal gospel, which was to fear God and give him glory, and etc., he was telling them the hour of his judgment had come. What happened in Matthew 24:14? And this good news of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the world as a testimony to all the nations, and then the end will come. So in in Revelation 14, the gospel was being spread to all of the nation, and then they was in the final hour of judgment. I mean, you see, it's going back and forth. Revelation is only Matthew 24 in apocalyptic literature. The whole Revelation can be found in Matthew 24. Matthew 24 is just a little short prophecy, right? And Revelation is a whole entire book full of imagery, apocalyptic literature, idioms, and all quotes from the Old Testament, all explaining what Christ was saying. It just dedicated a whole book to it instead of the little sections that Christ gave in the prophecy. So Revelation would kind of be more of a detailed view using apocalyptic literature. So now, I mean, what more can we go to? Because you can pretty much find all of Matthew 24 inside of Revelation, the book of Revelation. Let's see if we can find anything else. You got the sign of the Son of Man coming, the Son of Man coming on the clouds in heaven with power and great glory. That is Revelation 19. Revelation 19 and verse 9. And the angel said, hold on. Verse 11. Then I saw heaven open, and there was a white horse. His rider is called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judges and makes war. His eyes are like the flame of a fire, and on his head are many diadems, and he had a name inscribed that no one knows but himself, and he is clothed with a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. So you got the coming right there with great glory, the power and great glory. That's Revelation 19 and 11. What else do we have? The gathering together of the elect. That's the 144,000 being gathered with the Lamb. Let's see, what is that? Being gathered with the Lamb. I know it starts in Revelation 7. But I think it's somewhere else too, ain't it? Let me see here. And they saying, what's the 144,000 there? Want to see? Well, that would be Revelation 7, but I'm trying to find out what the other 144,000 at. When they was on the hill with the Lord, they was on the hill with the Lamb, and they were singing. Well, y'all can find it. It's there somewhere. Hold on, here we go, right here. Revelation 14 and 1. Then I looked, and there was the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him were 144,000 who had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven sound like the sound of many waters and blah, blah, blah. And no one could learn the song except the 144,000. So that's the gathering together of the elect coming up on Mount Zion, which is heavenly Jerusalem. They being gathered together in Christ for the supper. And these was being gathered together for the supper. Let's see here, because the separate happens in Revelation 20, I believe. 21. Where it says in the marriage supper. Nope. Hold on, give me 1 sec to find it. Prison, great white throne judgment, Revelation 20 and 11. That's the judgment. First heaven, the bride coming down. Yep. Revelation 21, 1 and 2. New heaven and new earth. First heaven, first earth passed away. I saw holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down as a heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. So that's the wedding right there. That's the Matthew 24, 31. And they together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to another. And you go into the other ones, you see that that's the great, that's the wedding. But hold on, let me something else. Oh yeah, the destruction of Jerusalem. That's the main one, right? You see all these things, do you not? I tell you, one stone will not be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down. Where is the destruction of Jerusalem at? In Revelation 19. It's 2 places actually. It would be, let's see here, Revelation 17 and it says Babylon has fallen. Right here, Revelation 18, 1 and 2. And after this I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having a great authority, and the earth was made bright with his splendor. So that's the coming in, that's the glory. He called out with a mighty voice, Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. It become a dwelling place of demons, a haunt of every foul spirit. For the nations have drunk of the wine of the fornication. Come out of her, my people, which is the fleeing into the mountains, so that you do not partake of her sins, which is her judgment. For her sins are heaped high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Render to her as she herself rendered. I am she's rude, no widow, and all that stuff. And all the kings of the earth committed fornication with her, and they wept and wailed over her when they see the smoke of her burning. They will stand far off in the fear of her torment and say, Alas, alas, the great city, Babylon, the mighty city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come. Remember when the eternal gospel got taught, right? Sorry about that. Remember when the eternal gospel got taught, then the end was going to come. The end was going to come on Jerusalem. The end, remember what was the signs of the destruction of the temple? When the gospel is taught to all nations, then the end will come. And in that age where that temple being in rule, that temple being the way to the Most High was in that age, in that covenant, and it was going to be destroyed. So now you have in that 1 hour, when the gospel is taught, within that 1 hour, the judgment is coming. Babylon, aka Jerusalem, was going to be destroyed, which is pretty much, and you go to verse 16, Alas, alas, the great city, clothed in fine linen, in purple and scarlet, adorned with gold, with jewels and with pearls. For in 1 hour all this wealth has been laid waste. And these are the things that were used in order to, for the curtains in the temple. These are some of the things that was used that the priests wore. And the jewelry and all that stuff, it was all in the curtain, it was all in the walls, it was all in the stones, it was all on the priest attire. So all of this takes you to the priesthood and to the temple and etc. You go to verse 20, with such violence, Babylon the great city will be thrown down and will be found no more. And the sounds of harpists and minstrels and flutists and trumpeters, all of that stuff is what Israel was doing with the singing and all that stuff. Verse 24, and in you was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all who have been slaughtered on earth. And you know, Christ told them a prophet cannot die outside of Jerusalem. Once again, to let you know that this was talking about Jerusalem. Okay, I think we're done with that, right? Is there any more? I think I done went through enough to show the correlations between the destruction of Jerusalem and Revelation. And then you got Revelation 21, 22. That's when the new covenant coming in, because they have exited out of the old Egypt. They have exited out of spiritual Egypt. So now they are inside of the wilderness, where a place had been set up for them. And with inside of that wilderness, just like in the old times, what did they do? They went on. Moses went on top of the mountain. So now this new mount is Mount Zion. So Christ is on top of the mountain, and he's giving out the covenant to the new people. That new covenant comes when Jerusalem is destroyed. They put on Christ. They thirst after Christ. They thirst after the gospel, and they partake to the gospel. They become the temple, and the Father and Son enter into them through the Holy Spirit, where they are to dwell, rule, and reign forever. That's pretty much it. Hopefully I didn't talk y'all heads off, but I was just here to show you how Revelation itself was actually Matthew 24 broke down into parabolic, apocalyptic language. That's all. So, and hopefully I answer your question, which the clouds actually represented like a place of judgment. From my studies, riding on the cloud and all that stuff, just represented judgment. But hopefully that all made sense. Thank you all for listening. Love you all. Revelation, the book of Revelation, has been fulfilled in entirety when Jerusalem was destroyed. Don't get lost up in the imagery. Don't get lost up in the great white throne judgment and all that stuff, because these things are apocalyptic literature, right? This is why you don't see all of the prophets talking about this great white throne judgment over and over again. You only see the great white throne judgment brought up in other apocalyptic literature, because they understood that this just represented a white throne, white purity, right? It represented a pure judgment on a nation, right? And why a throne? Because a king sits on a throne. The king is judging them. So the imagery of being on a great white throne, which could exist, but this is all parabolic language. So, okay, shalom, my brother. Yes, indeed. So, the great white throne judgment just represented pure judgment in its purest form from the king. So, and that's what Jerusalem got. It got judged in its purest form, because they the one who killed the prophets. They the one who killed the Messiah. And what did the Messiah tell them in the parable? The kingdom will be taken from you and given to people worthy of it. No more was it about your bloodline. The kingdom is going to be taken from you guys, because you guys don't know what to do with it. It's going to be taken from you bloodline people who thought that you was just righteous because you was the bloodline, and it's going to be given to a people who worship in spirit and in truth. The people who follow the guidelines of the gospel. But that's it. So hopefully that made it simple. I did my best. Love you all. Have a great day. Subscribe to RPK, Resurrection, Prophecy, and Kingdom, found on YouTube. Also, AOSD-The, Assembly of Sound Doctrine Chandler, where you can learn all kind of background information that you need to know before you come into RPK's university, because we might be saying a lot of terms and stuff that you haven't got that had been covered years ago. So, thank you all for listening. Have a great evening. Let me get back to work. Shalom.